Hello, everyone. My name is Tyrone Howard. I'm a professor of education here at UCLA, and it is an honor and a privilege to be with you this afternoon. Needless to say, we are facing some challenging times and people are trying to make sense out of the moment. And we want to have today's forum as an opportunity to help us unpack and understand the topic of racial trauma. I'm going to introduce our guests in a moment, but I want to welcome everyone to UCLA Connections, conversations to build community and foster resilience as we address and adapt to changes brought on by COVID-19. I want to go over a few housekeeping rules. I want to let everyone know that the chat and the question and answer functions have been disabled, but that you have incorporated some of the submitted questions into the conversation. I will be making reference to some of those questions throughout our conversation. I also would like to let all the attendees know that the webinar is being recorded and it will be available at your own time to review at ucla.edu connections. It brings me great pleasure and a tremendous honor to introduce a dear friend, a colleague, and who I like to refer to as a comrade in struggle, Dr. Nicole Green. She is the director of the Counseling and Psychological Services program here at UCLA. Welcome, Dr. Green.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Howard, and thank you to UCLA Connections for having me.
Looking forward to our conversation today. A lot going on in the world, and we want to help you. We want you to help us make some sense out of it. So I want to just jump right into it because I want to see how much territory we can cover in a limited amount of time. So I want to start off first by asking you this concept or term, racial trauma. Can you tell us what it is, and more importantly, how do we understand racial trauma?
Sure. Thank you again for hosting this. And this is an interesting term, racial trauma, that I've been aware of for quite some time, but I know it might be new to some folks. And I'm just going to be specific about applying this to the struggle for folks of African descent, African Americans, Black folks, since we're in this moment right now. I'm going to talk about the traumas themselves, because I think that there's a way in which we are thinking about this maybe as a more isolated incident. For most of us, especially in the Black community, we're aware that this is a pervasive and insidious and systematic assault against our people that's been going on for generations. So I first want to just name that the trauma is not one trauma. I feel like I do a lot of work. I also oversee our sexual violence prevention and advocacy program here at UCLA, that we are sort of in this emotionally abusive relationship with sort of the system of white America, or the culture around white America, and maybe not every white American, but certainly the culture and the infrastructure that we have. We've sort of been in this abusive relationship where there are times where it's more calm, and then there are times where it's more insidious, and there are times where there's more aggressive violence. And the insidious ways that we're coming to this, as well as the individual incidents. So in this relationship where we're sort of in this abusive, traumatic relationship, it's the physical violence, it's the emotional abuse, it's the gaslighting that it's not real, it's the political abuse, it's the educational abuse, which I know you know a lot about, it's the economic and systemic abuse, it's the neglect that has destroyed many communities and many cities in America. Let's look at Katrina, for instance. And it's been generational, and it's been comprehensive for so long. Mm-hmm. So thinking about the racial trauma, it's the reaction to all of that all of the time. That we're in periods where we sort of think there's something we can do to make it stop, that if we're educated the right way, or if we have the right jobs, it'll stop. It's sort of like almost in this sort of blaming the victim, that somehow you're in control of the violence. Mm-hmm. And really, for the most part, it's pretty predictable, but it's in the same way, we're not sure when it's going to show up or how it's going to show up. It's the Amy Coopers, it's not knowing when you're going to get challenged for your own humanity. So the trauma is really living with all of the abuse all of the time, and not knowing when it's going to show up, not knowing, and knowing in some ways all the ways that it shows up, and it's shown up for generations. So that really just speaks to the abuse. And I think the trauma reactions that we as a Black community have are to the abuses. So I kind of want to make that distinction. There are the abuses that are happening, which I think we need to address. And I don't want to make it incumbent on the Black folks to just manage our trauma, because that really doesn't allow us to really fix the system, because it's sort of like, let's fix the victim and not the perpetrator. So I just want to name that.
Yeah, every time I talk to you, Dr. Green, I come away with more knowledge and insight on these important issues. And I never thought about it that way from the standpoint of an abuser in an abusive relationship. So let's go one step further. You talked about the reactions. So what are some common responses or reactions to the trauma? And so how might Black folk respond in this moment? And so folks can understand the wide range of ways in which the reactions can manifest.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this too. And if I think about one person who's been through a lot of trauma, you know, there are usually, if you know anything about sort of trauma theory or mental health work, you know that sort of trauma shows up in two ways, more than that, but there's a few ways in which we think about it. We think about the impact on our bodies, which is our physical reactions when we're in a trauma, the feeling of just, you know, the amount of stress that's on your immune system, that from, you know, you can see in the health disparities, Black folks struggle with everything more, from asthma to diabetes to heart disease to now COVID. And some of it is access to healthcare, but some of it is our bodies and our immune systems are really dysregulated, related to how much we've been through, related to poverty, neglect, abuse, that all sort of stems from all of this in our history. And then you think about the active symptoms. They're more the anxiety, the hypervigilant. You hear a lot about a lot of Black men, Black people who don't sit with their back to the door, like always on alert. I don't know when the next thing is coming. I don't know if I'm going to be ready to respond. So I'm simultaneously always on alert. And the negative symptoms, which have to do with more the depressed symptoms. At the same time, I'm dissociated. I can't sit with it. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm depressed. I can't engage. I'm not motivated. So when you think about trauma, you think about that. And I think about that in terms of the Black community. It's sort of the way we are. You know, we live sort of simultaneously always on alert and simultaneously exhausted and simultaneously angry and simultaneously grieving. All that's happened before, happened to our families, happened intergenerationally to us. And we're living in this state most of the time. And then when another abuse happens, we're back on alert. And then there might be times where we're lulled into things are fine. And then you just don't know when the next abusive incident is going to hit. And so we're constantly living with this. And you can see a wide range of reactions of folks in the community. And this isn't just specific to Black folks, but other kinds of other communities as well. But I'll say all the way to I'm so frustrated, I'm gonna burn everything down. I'm done. I'm done. And I've heard in this specific time, and you and I have done a lot of these together, all the way from the Black Bruins to Ferguson to Trayvon. It's been a long road. And I'm hearing a lot of people say, I'm done. I don't have any more to give. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to convince you that it's real. And part of the most insidious parts of the abuse are the gaslighting, that thing you think is a thing is not a thing. You know, I often use the example of this, like blue sky, red sky, like, you know, the sky is blue, that there's a lot of racial systemic pain. And then people like, the sky is red. There's no, you know, post-racial society, Obama, And then you're like, maybe the sky is red. And then the sky is blue.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's painful.
Yeah.
It's
painful. So, you know, I think about this wide range of emotions, from anger to despair to confusion to depression to anxiety. And I've had white colleagues who say, I want to talk to a Black student or a Black friend or a Black colleague, but I'm not sure if I should. I don't know what to say. And on the flip side of that, I've heard Black folks who say, I just don't want to respond at all. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've said all I can say. I need folks to figure it out on their own. Have you heard those kinds of responses?
Absolutely. And all the range in between, to people who are, I've heard most for this period, a lot of folks, I'm tired. We're in 2020. And in a way, we're in a time where, you know, COVID in some ways has created a space where there are no distractions from it. You know, in a lot of the other cases, it seems like it goes to the news and then it fades away. But now we're just in it. and we're inundated because of social media by it. And so for the white folks who are like, how do I engage? I think the first thing is to know that there's a wide range of reactions. For most Black folks, we're tired.
Yeah.
And for the people that feel like, I don't want to respond, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
And sometimes there's a tendency for some Black folks to be like, I have to respond. I need to respond, because if I don't, then I've lost a captive moment, or I've lost an attentive ear. But I hear you saying that don't feel obligated.
I do feel that. And I also want to just say, again, going back to this conceptualization around trauma, there's a lot of ways in which people attempt to recover from trauma. And, people struggle with, if I live in my joy, does that mean I'm not loyal to my trauma or to my people? If I don't look on social media, am I somehow privileging myself out of this as a Black person? Or does it mean I'm not as committed, I'm not as involved, I'm not as loyal, I'm not as down? And so we judge ourselves for not being able to stay in it or to have joy in this time. And I want to say that one of the struggles that we as a community really have is about trying to find a way to be committed and be in it and give ourselves permission to also thrive when we're in times like this. Because I think that sometimes that's a struggle for people as well.
So that's important, because it leads to my next question, which is, what are some positive ways that people can cope with trauma? How are they able to find not the sort of maladaptive ways that we frequently hear about? What are some affirming and some self-sustaining ways to deal with anger in these moments?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to affirm or to validate what has happened. I think a lot of trauma, especially as you go back to this conceptualization about what the trauma is, part of it is like having to sort of kind of collude with the denial of it sometimes. And to just give yourself permission to affirm and to know this is real. And I know there's, for instance, the denial of the all lives matter versus Black lives matter. That's a denial of it. It's almost like a gaslighting, that somehow we're trying to privilege ourselves above other people and people not getting it. So I think allowing yourself to affirm and know what's real is a good one. I think taking care of your basic needs. I mean, one of the things to just be mindful of is when you're in a period where you've been traumatized, your fight, flight, or freeze response is activated. Like you're ready to either fight the situation, flee the situation, or you freeze. And watching, George Floyd, the officer's knee on his neck, many people would freeze. It's overwhelming to your system. And so your nervous system is, I think many collectively, our nervous system is dysregulated right now. And so trying to get ourselves out of this fight, flight, or freeze response is like, number one, self-care. Trying to kind of come out of a state of panic, trying to eat right and sleep right, even when you know you can't right now, trying to do things that regulate your basic bodily system. Because I really think that a lot of the reasons we struggle with a lot of these health disparities is because our bodies are just so dysregulated from just generations of trauma. I think the other thing is to be in spaces of love and community and support, and to be able to talk about these. I'm really grateful to be able to be on this, even to talk to you right now. It's affirming, it's validating, it's connecting with what's real. I think that that's really important. Journaling, dancing, all the things we've always used, music, art, are all these things.
Oh, it's helpful. So then there are those folks who are out there who are wondering, how can I support someone who's going through this? What can I do? What can I say? How should I be there for those individuals who might be experiencing racial trauma? What would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, this notion of being a good ally. I think step one is to be educated. Because I think sometimes people are like, educate me. That's how I'm going to be open to you. And I think people are done. I'll speak for myself in having facilitated a number of these over the last 2 weeks. I know we work with a lot of students. Students are done, faculty are done, staff are done. So being well educated around the issues is really important. To say I see you and to say like, I get it, you know, I think is helpful. And a lot of times it may not be helpful because people are like, regardless of whether you get it, I get it.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but I think the best way they can be is not to talk to other Black folks, but to talk to white folks. We don't want to do the educating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I know a lot of white folks struggle with the word race, the word racism, the word anti-Blackness, the words around social injustice, racial injustice, and you hear a lot of euphemisms. For people to be able to be white folks in white spaces saying we need to deal with this is probably one of the most, because it addresses really where the intervention should be, which is around the system that perpetrates and colludes with this.
Yeah, no, one of the concepts I'm thinking of as I'm hearing you respond to that is that there's a phrase that's used by a educational sociologist by the name of William Smith, and he talks about racial battle fatigue.
Yes.
That for many Black folk and other folk of color, there's just this tiredness that you experience from constantly having to be the person who is trying to explain, trying to educate, trying to enlighten, trying to give scenario after scenario, example after example, and you just feel just exhausted at times. And I think, just as you mentioned this, Dr. Green, and I hadn't thought about it until you just mentioned it, we've had these kinds of forums for like, Trayvon Martin here on campus. We've had these forums for the Black Ruins Matters here on campus. Eric Garner, we've had them for. Ferguson, the list goes on. And so at some point, you really start to feel this sense of, I don't know how much more I can continue to say the same things over and over again, to explain over and over again, to react over and over again. I just want to feel my own emotions. I want to be in my own pain. I want to be in my own sort of whatever I'm in, because I'm a human being and I deserve that.
Right. And I deserve the rest. And so, you know, I do think that allies and allyship does mean the focus is not the attention. I think we've done a lot better of this maybe around sexual violence, around the attention not being so much on what the victim needs to do different, but what the perpetrator needs to do different, and what bystanders need to do differently. And so as an ally, as a bystander, as a white folks person engaged in the struggle, it's when folks of color are saying we need more diversity, listen. When folks are saying, you know, all the work that you do, this is how to make it more successful for Black men to get through persistent education. Believe you, you know, and engage in the recommendations, as opposed to let me hear it again.
Yes, for the umpteenth time, right?
Yeah, let me hear it
again.
So
let's pivot, because we've got a lot of great questions from folks who are out there. I want to dive into as many as we can with the time we have. So one question is that, how do we recognize trauma in others?
Yeah, that is a very difficult thing. And, you know, especially I think in the Black community, we are so like, is it safe to share with you all that I'm going through? Because we've been hurt so many times that there is a layer of protection that might be in place. So you may not know immediately, you know, and I think, you know, really demonstrating that I'm open to hearing about it, but then being open when they don't share with you, it's not personal. It's that I don't know whether you're safe yet. So in my opinion, to be allied is to send the text I appreciate, but not expect a whole lot back. To be in spaces where you say, like, I don't want the Black person to have to run the meeting on race. I want, you know, I want to take a stab at this. I want to try to educate myself and do this in a way that makes sense. I want to be the one on the diversity committees advocating for more diversity in whatever spaces there are. So I think that, but recognizing the trauma, I have to be honest with you, it's not always apparent for a lot of people, because many of us have learned how to, you know, back from the Du Bois, you know, that code switching, learn how to live in the environment in a safe way under the radar, because I don't want to get hurt. Some might be more angry and more available and might share more or share the grief or be more open about it. But that doesn't mean that the person that's not sharing is not in pain.
That's right.
It just means that we just live in this world where we have to, the dual, the kind of like that dual existence.
Yeah, that double consciousness.
Double consciousness.
And part of my concern, Dr. Green, becomes that there are a lot of Black folks who have normalized the trauma it's become so endemic to the world that we occupy that we just sort of operate every single day knowing it's just a part of who we are. And we learn how to navigate worlds in ways that most folks could never imagine because it's so endemic to our day-to-day experiences. So I think you're right. We can't look for a one-size-fits-all approach to how trauma is going to manifest itself. I think you just have to give the people space to be human.
Right. And you would expect that some people are, you know, you see many parts of our own Black community that are really, you know, I would say depressed.
Mhm.
Alcohol, weed, smoke, you know, you smoking a lot of weed, doing a lot of things to try to just numb out.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
you see a lot of people who are highly activated right now
Mhm. Mhm.
and ready to burn it down, you
That's right.
know. And so there's just a wide range of what people are going through right now, because we have to remember that this is on top of the daily stressors of COVID and trying to do work from home and trying to manage your kids. And before it was traffic, and then it's this and that. It's like we're doing this on top of the daily stressors, our own family dynamics, you know, in relationships with intergenerational trauma dynamics happening in the households. And then on top of that, this systemic thing where as a Black community, since we're all we've ever had, when George Floyd gets killed, it's like
Mhm.
my family got
Mhm.
killed.
Mhm. Yep. So we have a lot of folks who are out there who are parents, and they're trying to figure out, how do I have these conversations with young children? And so one of the questions says, what steps can I take to keep my grief and anxiety from bleeding into my relationship with my toddler child? So what advice would you give there?
Yeah, and I say this in all seriousness. On a good day, a toddler is hard. You know, if
Mhm.
all good things are in place, and you have
Mhm.
another person helping you, you know. So I think it's really, really important to pay attention to that regulation of your own system. Am I in a space to be able to engage with my toddler? Do I need to take a break? If I don't have the resources to take a break, can I give myself permission to put my child in front of the screen time? Can I give myself permission to take, even if he's screaming, she's screaming, they're screaming, go upstairs and take 10 deep breaths? Can I
Mhm.
get in the shower? Can I put on some music? You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
so I don't want to undersell, like, in general, parenting a toddler is a difficult thing. So on top of it, to be going through all this and trying to relax. And I know, especially Black women, we have just gotten used to compartmentalizing and
Mhm.
moving through, and not even, what I'll say is more common to me, like so numbed out, we can't even tell how we feel. We're just due.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I want to kind of say that we have a right to pay attention to what our needs are and to put some boundaries in place and to ask for help. I think the other thing to just say is to ask for help.
Yeah, one of the things I've heard from a number of my white colleagues is that I just, I, like many other white people, don't know how to talk about race, don't know
I
what to say
know.
about race. I don't want to
Mhm.
put my foot in my mouth. I don't want to say things that are stereotypical or say things that are really bad. So therefore, I just avoid it altogether. So even when it comes to matters with my children, despite all the things that are going on, I just don't talk about it. And my advice to those individuals is that not talking about it is part of the problem.
That's right.
Avoiding it is part of the problem. That part of the history of America is race and racism. And
Mhm.
in an age-appropriate way, we have to find ways to engage our young people about what they're seeing in the world around them. You have to be able to say, look, there are some ugly, unfortunate things that have happened in this country to Black people, to brown people. So I'm thinking that this is the time for many of our white colleagues and friends to develop that courageous muscle, to start having the conversations, to start reading, to start learning. Because if they don't, I think then we have another generation of young people who don't talk about these
Yeah,
issues.
because it participates in the gaslighting and the colluding. And I've been saying to a lot of white colleagues, you've been colluded and gaslighted yourself to believe for generations that, like, again, we're in this honeymoon period, or this isn't an issue.
Mhm.
And people are like awake right now, you know, and I
Mhm.
don't want people to go back to sleep, because
Yep, right.
it is the privilege of being able to go back to sleep. And it
Yes.
is your privilege to be able to collude. Because when you
Mhm.
do, with any abusive system, you know, there really, the collusion is what maintains the system.
Mhm.
So I would
Mhm.
encourage white allies, colleagues, folks to just stay awake.
Yes.
And what does that mean, stay awake? Does it mean that I talk about it and I put my foot in my mouth and I show my ignorance? It might.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
it mean that I, you know, try to educate myself first? Yes. Do I have some responsibility to learn the actual? And we all grew up. I mean, I'm a Gen Xer. with a whole lot of fairy tales and lies in history class and all kind of different classes. And we should all be mad about that. You know, some of us had to learn from our families, our grandparents and whatnot. But there's a whole lot of people that learned a whole bunch of lies.
Yeah.
And we should be mad about that.
Yeah, yeah. So you just said something, Dr. Green, that's important here. And it speaks to one of the questions that someone said. Someone asked, how can I avoid being consumed with this issue all the time? And I think that question comes from a good place, but I think it speaks to your issue of privilege, because the question frames around how can I opt out at some point?
Yeah.
How can I step away at some point? How do I not deal with this? But that's a privilege that some folks do not have.
Right.
You want to say more about that?
I think you said it. I think, I always use the movie The Matrix, like to the people that you can take the red pill and see it. And there's a lot of people that want to out. I don't want to see it anymore. Take me out. Take me out. But there are lots of people in this world who live in the Matrix every day. And they just understand that you are operating on a different plane than they're operating, in a whole different world than they're operating. And you do have that privilege, but I would encourage everyone to get in the game, because it is really important that we all see what's really real, that we're not gaslighted, we're not colluding with systems that pretend that there's more equality than there is. It is dangerous, and it's actually what leads to the violence that we've seen against Breonna and Ahmaud and George, because the violence is at the tip of the iceberg. All that's colluded with it allows this to happen. So I really think that that's important to just recognize and know. And I also think, for the Black folks and brown folks that really see it and want, how can I see it but also have joy? And I want to remind, I think, the Black folks that are out here, we are more than our trauma. We are brilliant, and often we're co-opted and there's appropriation to us, but there's so much to us that is valuable, and our trauma is a huge part of our identity, but it's also not all of our identity. There's a lot that we can engage in and have freedom to engage in just Black joy and freedom.
Yeah. And I've talked to a number of Black students, Black faculty, Black staff here on campus who have said that, I feel guilty if I'm not out at a rally. I feel guilty if I'm not at a protest. Does that mean I'm not as committed to the cause? And I always respond to that by saying, not at all. We all respond to these traumas and these moments in our own unique ways. And I don't think we can engage in this process of sort of determining our level of commitment to show how much we're supportive of a particular issue based on whether we show up. Just being human in this moment, being sane in this moment is enough to let you know that you are still processing.
Right, to engage. And I always, I've seen a lot of posts recently about being in your lane. Some people are going to donate. Some people are going to protest. Some people are going to be like me. I'm not going to go to the protest, but I sure will hold the people who are protesting and take care of their mental health.
That's right.
You are going to do, right and really be a thinker in terms of policy change, because the protest is one day.
That's right.
But the policy change and the cultural change is an everyday. So you didn't pick that one day.
That's right.
You got a lot more days to be in the struggle.
Right. Yeah. I always tell folks that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Exactly.
And part of what we have to recognize, and I tell people this, if you're going to be involved in this work and you're going to be a part of this struggle, you're going to be integral to this fight, it's not for the faint-hearted, it's not for the thin-skinned, and it's not for the easily winded. If you thought you can show up at a protest on Monday and say, I'm done with it, then maybe this is not for you, because this is the sort of the day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out struggle that lots of folks have been fighting for most of us our entire adult lives, right? So it's a matter of be clear and be careful and be conscious about what you're choosing to embark upon, because some of us don't have the option or the privilege to sort of dip in and dip out. Even if we want to step away, we still walk into a world that reminds us every single day about who we are.
And I just want to also say, some of it is just being able to untangle our own family dynamics, just getting better at responding rather than negative coping, which I understand why there is so much, but this has done so much damage to the way in which Black folks live in the world and relate to each other and take care of our own health, that just trying to commitment to being healthy and not, going for the okie doke and not paying attention to our bodies and our health and everything, that in and of itself is going to move us forward as well. So just taking care of yourself is an
There you
act,
go.
really is
There you go.
a place of activism.
No, and an act of resistance and an act of empowerment and agency as well. So, one of the questions that I also get, and it's here in our list of questions that's come from some of our attendees, is that I don't know that discussing matters around social justice are part of the workplace. If I work in a space where my goal is to process, my goal is to be involved in marketing, my job is to deal with billing, whatever it might be, is this really the place where I want to engage in these conversations? How would you respond to folks who have such a sort of dilemma of sorts, right? Do I talk about these matters in the workplace? Do I not talk about these matters in the workplace? Is it appropriate if I don't make reference to them? Am I politicizing the workspace if I do bring it up? And folks are just kind of looking for some direction. What would you suggest to those individuals?
It's so funny. I just did a consultation this morning with how an IT department was going to talk about everything that's going on. And really, it's in the context of, if I work in a space, is there space for me to check on people's humanity?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you doing at this? You might see, people from all over the world. Oh, this is like what happened to me in my country, or this is like what happened to me in this circumstance, or, I'm struggling with how I can be active and do IT. I do think it's not about we're doing social justice work as much as we're doing humanity work and increasing the fluency that we're trying to just keep in the blue sky, no gaslighting, that the matrix is real every day, and let people continue to know it, because that's how it doesn't die away. When people just say that's not part of this workplace, that's where it starts. We go back into our slumber.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the honeymoon phase starts again. And then we're jolted out of it, and it's very triggering. But if we can know systematically, these are all the ways that this is showing up all the time, it might be painful, but at least we don't lose track of the fact that this is real every day.
That's right. So, Dr. Green, I have a question. This is one. So I've got a number of white students who I've had this quarter who have struggled with this. And they struggle because, again, as one of the questions is intimated, they're trying to have these conversations with parents or grandparents who just don't see these issues in the ways that they see them. And some of my white students have talked about how hard it is because they've basically almost severed relationships or had very, heated exchanges to the point where they're contemplating disassociating themselves with siblings and aunts and uncles. Is that a form of racial trauma when white people who try to engage in these conversations with family members and relationships with loved ones are compromised in a real severe way or even severed? Is that a form of racial trauma?
Racial trauma, I probably would put it in the bucket of like when you see the matrix and other people don't, and you can't get them to see it. And so it's a little bit of like them witnessing the privileges of the past and them not buying into it anymore. And I do think there's a feeling of separation, disconnection, loneliness, and there can be trauma there depending on how painful and destructive it's been. So I don't want to conflate the term, is it racial trauma, like in the way that I've been using it for the Black folks, but I do think it is traumatizing when people challenge your reality, regardless of what it is.
Right.
When people are trying to gaslight you, when people are trying to like help have you unknow what you know to be true, that is a traumatizing experience. And if anybody's lived in any family system where they try to say that alcoholism isn't real, or this person really isn't dysfunctional, and then you have to be around that toxic, it feels toxic. That's what it feels like. It feels toxic.
No doubt. So let's recap, because I know we have about 10 minutes left, but I want to go back to some of the proactive steps that we can take to help manage racial trauma. And I want to make sure that you have the opportunity to remind us again of steps that folks can take to ensure that they're managing their emotions in this moment. And then you're going to also offer us some resources. So if we can go to the slide that Dr. Green had.
Yeah, so, I start with the basic needs only because, I'm really concerned about the health disparity stuff. And I just know there's such a relationship between racial trauma and stress and threat, and then us and our compromised health. So taking care of your basic needs, the eating, and sleeping well, drinking a lot of water, doing exercise, so you're not holding all that tension, and that you're able to really, you get depleted so fast if you don't have any sleep, your sleep is dysregulated, you're not eating well, and you just don't have the resilience. And as you said, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So I always feel the need to, because if we look at the research on resilience, one of the big buckets that makes people more resilient is to take care of their basic needs. And one of the ways I like to talk about it is, like, if you think about a bank account, if you take care of yourself, you put a lot of deposits in your bank account, then when there's a withdrawal, like a George Floyd, you at least have something to pull on.
Mhm.
But if you're already depleted, and I talk a lot about this with students when they don't sleep and they're not eating well, and then it's finals, then you're doubly hurting yourself. So at least we need to keep our bank account of ourself full with these basic needs. That's kind of where I want to.
So can I chime in on that? So part of what I hear you saying here is that even for individuals who might say, I have a hard time sleeping during these times, or it's difficult for me to eat during this time, or I just don't find the motivation to exercise, to still try to make a very concerted effort to make
Right.
sure.
There's lots of apps that really will increase your sleep. I would just pay attention to what you're eating. And anybody, when your body's under threat, is going to want fat, sugar, and salt. But if you can, I mean, it's just, especially in communities where we've used food as a coping, I know that's true for me.
Mhm.
And I really do think that trying to eat better, it's not an either or. It's not a best choice or a no choice. It's, can I do better?
There you go.
So can I try to lay down? Can I try to, I can leave some resources about how to improve your sleep. But it's all of those things. Can I try to get a little more water in? Just so I'm not dehydrated, because it really does add to headaches and things like that on top of what we already got going on. So self-care is a really important one.
Mhm.
So next one. Other self-affirmation, self-care, naming the pain, journaling, talking to folks, music, dance, prayer, getting on some of the online forums, if they're safe. For some people, I say, only look at the news twice a day. It's not going to change that much,
Right.
So if you can't handle all of it and you can't read all the stories, give yourself permission to regulate that and take breaks. But there's a lot of ways in which communities can use what we've always used: music, dance, prayer, meditation, journaling, naming the pain, talking to people. That's going to be helpful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Love and belonging, community. Another aspect of resilience that they found is that when people are in community and feeling loved and belonged, that they're more resilient. So be where you are and are affirmed and heard. So being in spaces where, I used to run years ago, Graduate Students of Color Support Group. I've run Healing in the Black Family groups. When you can be real and feel affirmed and heard, people feel better.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, Dr. Green, that's been more challenging for some folks during COVID-19 because we're not
Yeah.
in the same spaces in ways that we typically have been. And I wonder if that may speak to why we've seen such massive turnouts for some of the protests, because people are able to do this very thing you're referring to. They're able to be in community with people in ways that they would not typically be on a campus or in the workplace. And I think we need that in many ways.
Absolutely. And, we've hosted many forums over the years just to try to get through some of these other incidences. And part of that is just being in a space where you don't have to justify what you're feeling. It's just everybody understands it. Finding support. So I will list the resources, but if you're a faculty or staff, to use the counseling center, faculty or staff counseling center, to get resources. On our CAPS website, even if you're not a student, there's a database in our resources section where you can maybe find a clinician or to support you, or a therapist, and you can sort of search by different identities and different expertise. So that's important. Use your community safely or remotely. I know we posted that forum last week that I thought was really helpful, and just engaging in spaces where you're able to talk and affirm and find release.
If I can add one point on this one, and this might be a much longer conversation, and this might be part two, but I've heard you speak many times before about for many communities of color, and oftentimes for many Black folks, the whole idea of mental health support, talking about mental health, checking in on my mental health is just something that many of us were not taught to do. We're not socialized to do. How do we break that? How do we get out of that sort of, this is not what we do, I don't check in with my feelings? And there's also some of this that's steeped in some toxic patriarchy stuff too. So what do you say on that one real quickly?
Yeah. I'll say forums like this. I'll say I'm trying to make the link that, we do, how could our mental health not be impacted by all that's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of this, like blaming the victim / this gaslighting, we've learned that like we need to handle it ourselves. It's not safe to talk about it. People are going to judge you. You should be able to just figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to talk to other people, but they're traumatized too. That's to some extent helpful, but I do think that we all have to get real about the anxiety, depression, trauma, family dynamics that have also, it's been a result of all the oppression we've suffered, but it is real. And I think people are, a lot of it has to do with this, something must be wrong with you. But of course there's something wrong. So much has happened to us.
Right. Own it. Name it. That's right.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. And it's okay that, and it's not you. I think the message that we get is that it's something we're doing wrong, and somehow if we were to act right or be educated or do this right thing, we should be able to handle this. And really, this is way beyond anything that I think any one person should handle alone.
Oh, well said. I agree 100%. What else you got for us?
Okay, last one I think I have is purpose, meaning, and activation. So I think the question that you've asked is about, how do I be in the movement? Because I do believe, the movements have what moved us forward all along. The civil rights movements, protests, all of it, big ones, small ones. So purpose and meaning and activation, that is a part of resilience as well. Obviously, you need to take care of yourself first, but finding ways to activate that seem right for you. Avoid the overuse of social media, but I know that people are doing wonderful blogs and telling their stories and out there protesting, donating their time, talking to folks. So whatever feels meaningful to you in the struggle is a lot of room to make a contribution around this, even if it's graduating and just being another person who's well-educated and can contribute to this fight.
So are there any resources that you might offer folks can go or to?
Yeah, so the last things I guess I'll mention is our counseling website. This is for students, so I just want to be mindful. I know this is a very broad audience, but there are some resources on there. Again, that database, if you're looking for mental health support and services. Rise Center is our sort of wellness arm of our counseling center. And we offer, there are meditations, there are things already on video, there are yoga sessions on the website, as well as readings and articles, not just for Black folks, but allies and folks who want to be activated in the struggle. So there's a lot on that website. I would also encourage you to check out, if you're staff, the Staff and Faculty Counseling Center, you can just Google it. And in your own communities, find support. And if you have other questions, certainly reach out to the Counseling Center and we can try to support.
Dr. Green, I can say that you are one of the most valued treasures that we have here on the UCLA campus. You always show up when we need you. You always exemplify your brilliance when we are in some of our most challenging and difficult times. I cannot say thank you enough. You have always been there whenever I've asked, and I know I'm one of many folks who ask for your time, your talents, your intellect, your resources. I'm going to ask you to make sure you're taking care of yourself in these times, because I think we have to think about who helps the helper. You've been the helper for this campus and for lots of other folks for a very long time. So I need you to prioritize your self-care and continue to do what you do, because we need you. I can't say thank you enough for what you provided. I always come away more informed. I always come away more reflective. And for that, I cannot say thank you enough. So much appreciated for today's conversation with UCLA Connections. And I think we may have to take this on the road. I think we got a part 2 and a part 3 that we can do.
I'll wait. If you're involved, I'm in. I'm in. I would say the same
Likewise.
for you, Tyrone. I've learned so much from you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
And thank you all for attending, for being part of our conversation. Remember, if you want to, at any point in time, watch some of the recorded versions of the UCLA Connections, the information is there before you. And we just want to say thank you for the more than almost 400 people who joined us today. I think this speaks to the importance of this topic, the desire for us to be better, and the intentionality we are placing on trying to respond to issues of racial trauma. So thank you all very much. Take care of yourselves and be well.